I want to tell you about a new podcast called Amuse News. Publishing multiple days a week, Amuse News is your source for food news, interviews from around the food world, and more. On the show, we'll be engaging with food storytellers, from chefs to advocates to people working in the field, and many more. Find Amuse News wherever you get your podcasts. Amuse News is a destination for everyone who's looking for a new, insightful look into the world of food.
Hi, this is Marion Nessel. I'm the Paulette Goddard Professor of Nutrition, Food Studies, and Public Health at New York University and a longtime fan of Heritage Radio.
Like Marion, you too can support Heritage Radio Network, a member-based nonprofit radio station operating out of Bushwick, Brooklyn.
I've been on it countless times. I love being interviewed. The interviewers are always really well prepared and fun to talk to about the issues that matter to me the most, about how we can change our food system to one that's healthier for people and the environment. It's just invaluable to have an independent radio station that's dealing with these issues. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful asset.
Support Heritage Radio Network by becoming a member today. Go to heritageradionetwork.org and click on the beating heart to donate.
Today's program has been brought to you by Route 11 Potato Chips. Made with a secret recipe and superior ingredients, their mission is to make an outstanding product in a safe and clean environment. For more information, visit www.rt11.com.
I'm Damon Bolte, host of The Speakeasy. You're listening to Heritage Radio Network, broadcasting live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. If you like this program, visit heritageradionetwork.org for thousands more.
Hey, Farm Report listeners. We have a special treat in store for you this week. What follows is a special recording I did on Monday morning with Daina Trout, the founder of Health-Ade Kombucha. In this interview, we talk with Daina about the founding of the company, the history of kombucha, and what it means for consumers going forward. I hope you enjoyed the show. All right. Thank you, David, in the engineer booth, for those smooth sounds to kick us off. You, of course, are listening to the Heritage Radio Network. We are coming to you, as always, from the back of Roberta's Pizza here in Bushwick, Brooklyn. It is the AM, and we are starting things off right with a tasting flight of kombucha. And here to take us through the flight and the story of kombucha and her story is Health-Ade founder Daina Trout. Daina, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, I am really excited to learn more about you and to kind of get some of my burning kombucha questions answered. We first connected. You were one of the sponsors of the Cherry Bomb Jubilee back in the spring, and I, along with our entire HRN team, are somewhat obsessive Health-Ade kombucha drinkers.
Nice.
It's not typical, for me to post on social media about my beverage choices, but I definitely remember my first Health-Ade. It was magical. Thank you. And I'm wondering, do you remember your first kombucha?
Yes. Great question. I've never been asked that before.
Yes. Starting out right.
Yeah, I do remember my first kombucha. It was probably 2007, and I had a GT Synergy kombucha. I had like the cosmic cranberry flavor, I think, and it was in Boston. I was in graduate school. And I immediately fell in love.
Why did you pick it up off the shelf? Were you in the habit of, the 2007, I think people, it's like a little hard to remember in the same way it's like hard to imagine a world before, Instagram. Like, it's hard to me to imagine a world before you went to the beverage section and there was more than like Pepsi and Coke and the like whole selection of beverages that we enjoy today. It's a relatively new phenomena.
Yeah, it was for sure a new phenomenon. It was definitely in a natural food store. But I was in school for nutrition at the time. I was in graduate school, and I was really falling in love with fermented foods. And I'd learned a lot about kombucha, and then I remember just looking at the shelf, seeing a kombucha there, and I was like, oh, this is what I was reading about. And so I bought one.
So you bought one and you were hooked.
And I was hooked, yes.
Because of the taste or the feeling or what you had read and thought it was doing, or?
Certainly, no, not the reading part. I think I just liked the taste. At first, it was certainly kind of like, what is this? This is interesting. Almost like the first time you tried beer. You weren't like totally sure.
Right.
But then, it made me feel a little bit like light, and I really enjoyed drinking it. And I found myself like immediately craving one the next day. And then the day after that. So it wasn't a week before I learned how to make it.
Okay. So I want to come back to that part. But before we get there, you have a background in health and nutrition. You have your MPH. Is that right?
I have an MS. And an MPH. I have both.
She's got two. Whatever.
I was bored in school. No, really, I actually started doing like a lot of academia research. And then I realized that the labs weren't a place for me. So then I went and did my MPH.
So you obviously weren't, a young girl growing up dreaming of launching a kombucha company. What did you think you were going to do?
I think that's why I went to school for so long. I really didn't know. And I knew that I loved food, real food. I love to cook. I love to ferment foods. I love the art of it all. I knew that. And I think when I went for nutrition, I was kind of going in that right direction. But it wasn't until 2011 that I really felt like it was time for me to do something. So I would say what really drove me to start Health-Ade was just this sort of drive I had within to make my own mark on the world.
Yeah, you want to do your own thing.
Do my own thing.
I have to say nutrition programs in the U.S. are not known for being particularly... Yes. Progressive. I remember being in college and feeling like, man, maybe I should be like eating different and going to sit down with a nutritionist through the school program. And it was this very thin, timid woman who put a array of plastic foods on the table and kind of like took me through what a serving size was. And I was like, man, this is just like not what I thought it would be. Was your education different than that? Did you bring other stuff into it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was different from most of the nutritionists, although it's important to distinguish. There are different forms of nutrition in study, and one is called dietetics, and that's usually like what a clinical nutritionist would go through, and they're very focused on things like portion sizes, calories, the grams of sugar. Then there are other fields of nutrition like agriculture where you learn about like the politics of it all internationally, how you can make an impact. I was in human nutrition, so I was studying like the actual chemical and biochemical makeup of the food and what the impact is. I'm a nerd. Which is why I think I love fermented food so much. But I generally always had a holistic approach to nutrition, and definitely that differentiated me in school. I wasn't the only one like that, though. And graduate school, I think, is a little bit different. It's a little more inviting to the progressive folks. So I wasn't totally alone.
So you moved from the East Coast to the West Coast because?
Honestly, the food and the weather.
All right. And you guys are based now in Southern California.
Yep, we're in LA. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What was your first kind of job when you hit up LA? I mean, you weren't making kombucha yet.
No,
so.
I mean, I was making it for myself.
At home.
In my closet.
A slightly smaller amount than you currently produce.
Slightly smaller, although the same vessel.
Really?
Yes. It's a cookie jar from Bed Bath & Beyond.
Stop.
Yes. I wish I had it with me here because it's pretty amazing. But no, we are building our current brewery right now, and we'll have well over 150,000 of these jars. So we'll get to that in a second. But the question was about Los Angeles, and I forget the question already.
Yeah, what were you doing out there?
Right. So I actually, and it's kind of, I mean, I don't know if it's ironic, but I was always a holistic nutritionist, and I never really was super into medicine, unless, of course, it was necessary. I was the kind of person that wouldn't take an Advil.
Yeah,
unless,
me too.
I came to LA, and I was recruited to work for a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And because they had just taken on an omega-3 prescription drug, and I had done a lot of research on omega-3s and the impact on cardiovascular health. So they brought me on, I guess, as an expert in the field to help educate and train the sales reps. So that's what I did for 5 years.
And you were out there, because you started the company with your husband and with your best friend. Were you guys all just like chilling. What were they doing?
Okay, so yeah, we were chilling, just like in,
like you do in LA.
general,
I mean, that's like, I'm a New Yorker, so my impression is you guys just like hang out and drink kombucha.
Yeah,
so.
that's totally that's exactly right.
Looking beautiful.
Things just like happen to us.
Magic.
I woke up like this.
Exactly.
No. So what's really cool is Vanessa and I, and we always say that at Health-Ade there is like something watching over us, because it has just been, there's been so much hard work, but also a lot of luck. And one of the things I would consider lucky is that my very first day on the job at this pharmaceutical company, I was partnered with who else but Vanessa. We immediately became best friends. And, of course, we started a business together 5 years later. Justin was a musician, and he still is. Of course, I don't think you ever stopped doing that. Really special musician, incredibly good at the guitar, but was also working on the side doing marketing for a hair loss company, which is actually how we ended up getting to Health-Ade.
All right.
Right? I know. I'm like intrigued.
I'm like, draw me some clearer lines. I'm not quite there.
So we often say the story of Health-Ade is from hair loss to Health-Ade. So what happened was I was, I'd mentioned before in 2011, I was feeling unfulfilled, like there was some kind of mark I wanted to make. And it was actually getting a little bit like depressing. I think I had pushed away this voice for some time, and it just kept getting louder. And there was a point where I couldn't do anything but turn up the volume. And I shared with Vanessa and Justin, my two closest friends, that I was experiencing this, and I was surprised to hear that they were feeling the same way. And so we started an entrepreneur club, and nobody else showed up, even though we invited people. I mean, maybe it had to do with the fact that we were holding the meetings in Justin's Honda Civic.
All right. I'm like, was there snacks?
There was kombucha.
All right.
Because I had lots of kombucha. So we would sip on the kombucha. We had like $600 each to put toward this thing. And we, pondered what this big and cheap idea could be.
Okay. So the
hair loss part.
The goal of the meeting was to kind of get together. We have some cash. We have some snacks. We're going to start a business together.
We're going to start, can I cuss on the show?
Yeah.
A motherfucking company.
All right.
That was what we were going to start. And we came up with all kinds of interesting ideas. And they weren't even necessarily related to food. Of course, those were more the ones I was passionate about. But Vanessa and Justin were different. So Justin, I had mentioned, was working for this company. And he was very surprised to learn how far people would go to protect their hair, that asset. And he was selling like a tap-on hair product. So it wasn't even something that actually fixed hair loss at the root. And yet people were just sending in money, like in quarters, pennies, whatever they could get in order to get this
appeal to
product.
our vanity. We will show up.
So he was like, guys, if we can find an alternative way to regrow hair, this is it. And so Vanessa, Justin, and I started researching what could grow hair. And one of the first things we found in our research was the kombucha SCOBY, so the culture that's used to make kombucha, is used in parts of Tibet and other parts of the world as like a hair mask. It's mixed with like avocados or whatever, and you put it on your head where you're losing your hair, and apparently you're supposed to like preserve the hair that's there, or maybe even regrow some.
Get out.
So Justin was also personally motivated because he was on his last hurrah, according to his hairdresser. And now since has not lost any hair, so who knows? That could be a business opportunity.
Still waiting in the wings.
But we started, and I'm like, I know how to make these SCOBYs. So I started making kombucha and tweaking the recipe ever so slightly each week to get a really strong, healthy SCOBY. And what happened is the more I tweaked it to get a stronger, whiter, thicker SCOBY, the more we found that the kombucha started to taste downright really good.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was a point where we all sipped on it and said, this is the best kombucha we've ever had. Way better than what's on the shelf.
And like, we're going to make so many men happy when we save their hair with this.
And we had so much kombucha.
Yeah.
I mean, then it felt like so much. 16 or 17 jars worth.
It's a lot for, a group of,
for three of us.
There is a limit to my kombucha consumption.
Yeah. And me too. And so Vanessa called it, we had all this kombucha. It tasted really good. And it was almost the summer. It was March. And she said, let's just sell this in the farmer's market and figure it out. And so 2 weeks later, we named everything in the weekend. We made the label, the anchor, everything in the weekend. Even our tagline, Follow Your Gut, happened then, although I didn't even know how much it would mean moving forward. Then it was really just about probiotics and kind of like follow your gut to kombucha, but now it's way bigger than that. Started in the farmer's market 2 weeks later, sold out in an hour.
Wow.
And I remember being like, wait, did we just... All right, let's see how it happens next week.
Right.
And then a week later, when we showed up to set up, there was a line 20, 25 deep already before the market opened. And that's when we realized we had something. And so from that day, moving forward, we just always committed to making real kombucha because that's what makes us different. We committed ourselves to being the best and highest quality and best tasting.
So this is in 2012?
2012, March of 2012.
All right. So in 4 years, you guys have outgrown the farmer's market.
We have outgrown the farmer's market. We are still there, though.
Yeah?
Yes, that original space, and then also in Larchmont in LA. But yeah, no, we've outgrown it. We're in 42 states, 5,000 stores. I just hired my 50th employee, which is really cool because I'll be checking a different box on the IRS
I was going to
form.
say that, like, that's a big move for a small business. You're going into a new category. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're building a 50,000 square foot brewery. I'm very proud. It is definitely a real business now. And of course, we're in New York. Brooklyn is our number one, or soon to be our number one city.
No surprises. Brooklyn number one.
So we got a lot of Brooklyn people that like Health-Ade. I love that. And I love Brooklyn. So,
well, okay, awesome. So
that's hair loss to Health-Ade.
That's hair loss to Health-Ade. I had no idea. I want to talk a little bit about, because you said we make real kombucha. So I feel like my first kombucha, I cannot remember the brand name. It was like these stout little bottles. They had like pear and original and
High Country. Was it brown?
It was brown, yeah. But I remember being told that kombucha was like an ancient Chinese drink that was originated by creating a fermentation culture from some type of small bug. I've since, in my internet research, not been able to replicate that story, so I feel like maybe someone was like feeding me a line of...
The bug part.
Yeah, the bug part. So when you say real kombucha, what does that mean for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, just how you would make it at home.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way the food world is right now, and hopefully it will change, and I think it is changing, things when they become mass-produced, they just compromise quality. It becomes really distant from the original intent of the food itself. And we all know this. But I don't think people in general really understand how bad it's gotten and how hard you really have to push as a company out there trying to make it real, how big of a deal it really is.
Yeah.
So it's really just how you would make it at home. Glass jars, small batches. We don't add anything to the kombucha. We let it ferment on its own. I don't externally add any probiotics. We let the culture dictate the culture of the brew. So we think the brew will be ready on Monday. It may not be ready on Monday because it didn't feel like fermenting. Maybe it'll wait till Tuesday. And that's part of our process. Flavoring with things like cold pressed juice. We cold press it all in house. I mean, basically, like you would be making kombucha from home if you're like a person that cares about premium food.
Right.
You make all this stuff at home.
Right.
We just do that in a commercial kitchen.
And you keep it in small batches is like kind of the key, right?
It's huge. So the vessel you use to ferment your kombucha in, I think is one of the most important decisions because it is in that phase of fermentation. It's called primary fermentation. It's in this phase of fermentation that the kombucha is super active. So this is where it's eating the sugar and the culture is eating the sugar and in exchange infusing, in a sense, the tea with all of its probiotics and acids. Which ultimately turns sweet tea into kombucha. So you start with sugar in kombucha, but you end with very little sugar. So this process is very active. If I were to put a peach in there during this process, the next day it would be a pit. So it eats everything around it. Most of the brewers out there are using plastic at this stage. And they bottle it in glass.
As they brew it in a plastic vessel.
Right.
Got it.
Plastic or steel. And in my experience... well, certainly plastic I never played around with, but I did play around with stainless steel, and I think it's certainly better than plastic to use stainless steel, but even steel over time you would have some erosion along the bottom. What's interesting is kombucha is very acidic, so it is different than beer in that way. It's more like vinegar in that way, and if you go to like Italy where they make balsamic vinegar and Modena, they do all glass. And so I did a lot of research on this in the beginning and learned that glass is certainly the most inert vessel to use. And so you just want to put it in the most active stage with something it won't interact with. So we use glass. And that was always our thing from the beginning. In using glass, you can't be using like 100-gallon, 100,000-gallon, or anything in between vats, right? I mean, how do you even get a glass vessel like that? So we started with a cookie jar from Bed Bath & Beyond, and that's what we still use. We don't buy from Bed Bath & Beyond, though, anymore. But we did in the beginning. We drove all around town to get all the jars.
You just bought up all the jars in town.
Yeah. They were like, what's up with these cookie jars? They're like in such high demand suddenly. And then we just totally dropped because we got it directly from the source.
So you guys recently went through a round of fundraising. Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about how that went for you guys? Was there pressure as you're, putting together your deck and you're meeting with people who you're asking for a not insignificant amount of money? Was there kind of pushback on the brewing method, comparing you guys to other kombucha companies? Did you have to really stand up in that space, or were people kind of like, oh yeah, we see the growth of this market and we just are were people banging down your doors, or were you banging down their doors?
So from an investor, good question. So from an investor level, it was always very important to Justin, Vanessa, and I that we not even consider talking with people that wanted to change our process. So for the people that we even discussed or had discussions with already were into what we were doing. I will say that most people, especially at this stage, now that we've proved it can work,
right?
And we have efficiency in the brewery, most people are like, yeah, don't change what you're doing because this is working. But there are certainly pressures, not from the investors, I would say, definitely from everywhere else. And it has been really difficult to stand up. It has been a very important thing for us to do. And it's going to continue to be increasingly important, especially as governmental laws change. We just have to make sure that companies are standing up for real food.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the thing a little bit, I think, before you guys launched the company, there was a big kind of hullabaloo around kombucha, around is it an alcoholic product? Is it not an alcoholic product? Essentially from a regulatory standpoint, I think, how do we manage this thing? Mm-hmm. How do we categorize it, understand it, make sure it's being produced in a way that is safe for consumers? Has that conversation evolved satisfactorily?
That last
I'm guessing no. I mean, I feel like I knew the answer was no, but I kind of want to, because I think this is the thing when we talk about consumers understanding what's going on in the food system. There is this balance between protecting, promoting, ensuring food safety, mm-hmm. and producing real natural food, mm-hmm. and creating kind of transparency and accountability in the space. And
yep.
I feel like for a lot of small scale food producers, this becomes a big and unanticipated challenge really quickly.
Yes, 100%. So has it evolved? Yes. Has it been satisfactory? Not really. But I am fully, eternally optimistic and believe that we will win this fight on real food. And you're right, it is a balance. Foodborne illness and protecting people, you mentioned safety, all very important things.
Yeah.
How you define safety may not be exactly as the laws are defined.
Right.
So, and as you make more real food, so for example, let's just talk probiotics for a second. Probiotics now have been it's a mass-produced industry. You can go to the store and buy a pill of probiotic.
Yeah, I got Jamie Lee Curtis on a yogurt cup. I'm like, wow, all right.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got probiotics everywhere. And today, most of the probiotics are synthesized. They've been taken from their original form, somehow replicated in a petri dish, put into a pill, and then you eat it. Not necessarily bad, but as a holistic nutritionist, I think that there's a better way to get your probiotics. Yeah. I would be a bigger fan of getting it from real food, things that are naturally fermented. Even the fermented foods we have on the shelf, you mentioned yogurt, those are actually not made like they used to be. If you were making yogurt on your shelf, you would put a culture in it, just like kombucha, actually. Yep. Let it sit, ferment, and it's really delicious.
My mom definitely still makes yogurt.
Yeah. Yeah. Now what they do in the yogurt industry, again, not necessarily bad, they've identified the probiotics that exist in yogurt, a few of them, and they inject them and kind of create this almost mimicking fermentation, but they can control it a lot better. The only downside of that is, and I don't necessarily even see it as a downside, I just want also to be able to buy real yogurt.
Right.
That's made the way that you would make it at home.
Right.
And that's how we view kombucha. So, so the problem with making, so probiotics in natural form in food always exist around alcohol. Now, could there be a functional reason for this? Perhaps. Perhaps it would be interesting. I mean, a low amount of alcohol is dilating to vessels. Perhaps it increases the availability of these probiotics. I have no idea. I'm not even suggesting that that's the case. But it is an interesting thing to note that in the natural world,
it happens.
Wherever probiotics exist, so does alcohol.
Right.
Fine. A low amount of alcohol.
Right.
So we talked about safety. You know, I think when people are looking to buy a non-alcoholic beverage versus an alcoholic beverage, the defining point or the separating point is this going to cause me to be inebriated or not?
You're like, you would have to drink how much Health-Ade Kombucha to catch a buzz?
Right.
Like,
We did the math. I think you'd have to drink 6 kombuchas in an hour in 1 hour if you were less than 100 pounds.
Okay, so I'm going to double that.
Okay. So you'd have to drink 12 or whatever.
Right.
6 kombuchas in an hour in order to even begin feeling the initial effect of any kind of alcohol. So not even close to inebriating at that point.
Right.
I think when you put it in those kinds of terms, you realize that the alcohol is, very minimal. So it's less than 0.5%. It's similar to soy sauce, vinegars, anything fermented.
I feel like that's like the other thing. People are like, wait a minute, there's alcohol in a lot of stuff, and a lot of foods that we eat every day and all the time are fermented. So even though I think some of the terminology sounds very new, it's all super old and in our cabinets and fridges and has been for a long time.
Yeah, but the problem is how things have evolved today. Like we have so much, scientific support and improvement and options that companies, because it is still a real food, and the reality is it continues to ferment ever so slightly on the shelf, to stop, essentially to make it like a mass-produced item where they just feel it's totally safe to keep on the shelf.
Right.
They'll pasteurize it.
Right.
Which kills all the probiotics.
Right.
And then they'll put the probiotics back in, but now you're kind of playing God.
Yep.
So they do that in an effort to keep the alcohol exactly always where it is when you mass produce it. But I also want to open the conversation to okay,
maybe we have
this is a live food.
Yeah.
It is changing a little bit, but in terms of safety, we're nowhere close to a thing that's unsafe. So what if we had a conversation about where kombucha could live? Because I think people do want real fermented foods. And I don't want to go the route of engineering my kombucha. I'm not interested in that. There's plenty of companies doing that.
Right. Not your space.
Not my space.
And I feel like I don't know. I feel like you really can. This is such a from my Zingerman's past, you really can't taste the difference. It's like their tagline.
Yeah.
But I was saying I definitely remembered my first Health-Ade Kombucha. I think I got the beet because I was like, oh, that's
which
like
I
a
brought
wonky
you
flavor.
Too.
Yeah. And it just across the board, any flavor I've had from you guys, it just tastes brighter, livelier, and it has a sparkle to it. Even if I occasionally drink other kombuchas, I find myself very quickly going. I transitioned to your brand very fast because it tasted different. I mean, the bottle is beautiful, the logo, all that stuff is great too, but it really tastes different. And you guys are doing some interesting flavor stuff, and you have a new kind of line of flavors. I'm just wondering how did you decide? I mean, I don't think you were doing large scale consumer research and you're
no,
what America wants is beet kombucha. No one was asking for that.
No, we picked beet because I'm Lithuanian and Lithuanians love beets, and I just felt like I had to represent. So yeah, no research at all. Pretty much the cold press line, which was the original line, we were just what sounds good? And where could we get this the produce too?
Right.
And then,
interesting.
Yeah. And then you also had to consider, because we do it all in house. We have a bunch of juicers. It's pretty cool. When you're in LA,
I'm definitely coming by.
Pay a visit. You'll know exactly when you're 10 feet away from the door. You will know what we're juicing that day because Ginger, you actually have to like cover your eyes because it's like in the air. It like gets in the air. Beet, it looks like a murder scene, which I always love. So, yeah, I mean, the flavors, it was just, you also have to consider what's going to ferment well with the kombucha. So, like, certain things don't ferment well. We have 2 flavors coming out. Really exciting ones. Chocolate.
What?
We will be the first chocolate kombucha. First of all, I just, like, love the chocolate kombucha. It also makes really good cocktails when you mix it with something a little stronger. And then also coffee.
Chocolate and coffee.
2 different flavors. Yeah.
Why?
Well, I should actually say the full name. It's chocolate rishi. So our super tea line is where we're mixing what people might consider a superfood, although I hate that word because I think all things that come from the ground are superfoods. But you know what I mean when we say superfoods, things that are kind of exotic out there in the world. We don't really grow it here. Has some kind of functional benefit.
Right.
So that's what the super tea line is. That's the new one. So the Power Greens has wheatgrass, spirulina, and camu camu. Camu camu's coming out as like a new hit superfood. But the chocolate rishi will have reishi mushrooms, and it sounded like you had heard of them.
Yeah,
already.
I love it. We work with, I'm going to blank on the name of the tea company, but it'll come to me. And that makes it like wonderful, like mushroom teas. 4 Sigma.
Love them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're big fans. So reishi mushrooms have been shown to have or people have feel good when they drink it. Very unscientifically proven, like kombucha.
Trust your gut.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it is, right? And then cacao has also been, especially when it's not complemented with a whole ton of sugar, it's actually really good. So we use really high quality cacao and reishi, and we flavored it, and it's divine. And then the coffee is actually a cold brew, and we're still looking at who we're going to partner with to cold brew to add to our kombucha, but it'll be a cold brew matcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
nice.
it'll give you a little kick of caffeine.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, all of our flavors, we only subtly flavor. It's 90% kombucha and at most 10% juice or flavoring. So like the apple, we have to add quite a bit of juice for it to actually even taste like apple, but it's pretty subtle still.
Right.
So it's not like it's going to be like coffee in your face. It'll be more like, kombucha with a bit of coffee.
So I feel like one of the New York to LA rep, you do read a lot about, like you said, the superfoods, the tinctures, the tonics, the special kind of like health impacts, health things. But it sounds like you guys are kind of just having fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Thank you for reminding me. No, it totally is. First of all, I got to say that like what makes this so fun is the people, of course. Though the kombucha is fun and the scobies, we have a good time together. No, the people are what make this so much fun. I've got 50 employees. They are incredible. They all have the entrepreneurial spirit that Justin, Vanessa, and I had. And so we like to think of ourselves as a bit scrappy. We don't, we're not used to, it's not like any of us came from beverage, maybe with the exception of a few people. So we love it. We're just figuring it out and doing it the way we think is best. So it's not always conventional. It's a lot of fun to do it like that. A lot of creative people on my team.
Where do you go to kind of recharge and get inspired and polish up your business chops?
Besides Lafayette Park? Yeah, I mean, it's funny. The second part, so to recharge, I have to remember to recharge. I just had a baby, so it's becoming.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's becoming more difficult to, you have to like really inject the time. So I'm taking vacation. I really don't care. Anywhere where there's nature, a bed, and like a place to walk around, I'll be able to recharge. But you mentioned the business chops part.
Yeah.
And I mean, so it's being a CEO has been a really interesting journey for me. And I think one consistent lesson is that I regret when I don't follow my gut, which is, I alluded in the beginning to how important that tagline was and still is to me, because you really do. I believe that you have it in you to be successful. And you already know, and it's usually the layers you put to cover that.
Sure.
And some of those layers go way back. And I just had to learn that removing those was actually my best move. of course, advice from others that have done it before is important, but you kind of know when you really tap in and know what to do, or when you really tap in, you know what to do. And a lot of times I took a risk. Almost every day I take a risk where people say, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it doesn't quite make sense. You're going to sell like this weird fermented tea product at a farmer's market. You're going to make these like vegetal flavors out of these things that nobody wants to eat anyway.
Nobody thought that
You're
was
going
a
to
good
put
idea.
it in these like weird small glasses that like make it really difficult to scale up your production.
Yes.
You're going to like, you know, like all along the chain, you're like, well, we did this for this reason. And, you know, people, I feel like that kind of spirit, that authenticity, it somehow makes its way like across the shelf to you, like as a consumer.
That is really cool, because how do you like articulate that? You know, that makes me really happy. So good to hear.
And I feel like the future of beverage is looking bright. We have the coffee and the chocolate to look forward to. Where else should people be kind of looking to you guys to, you know, stay in touch, to taste stuff, to kind of come visit the factory? Is that going to be an option in the future?
You know, I mean, from a mass level, it's just an impossible thing to arrange. I mean, when you start having a brewery where people can actually visit, it's a whole business in and of itself.
Yeah.
You got to create like infrastructure around that. It's also a whole different kind of permit in LA, which we don't have. So I can take certain special guests through as my people, but unfortunately I can't invite it to the public just yet. Our next brewery, I think after that, I'll make sure I have the time.
There'll be like a tap room up front.
Oh, for sure. That would be really, really cool. Where can you find Health-Ade? I mean, right now I mentioned 42 states. New York and California are two biggest states. We'll be doing a lot of activities here. Did you know last month we sampled 30,000 people?
Wow.
So that's a really big deal for a small company to figure out, you know, 30,000 people to try our product in a month. So we'll be doing a lot of marketing events this summer. You'll see us around New York. Brooklyn's a big hotspot for us. Obviously, our website, Health-Ade.com. But actually, I've got a new project coming on in the next 12 months that I'm excited to announce. And I think as we continue our relationship, I'll make sure I alert you when it opens up. It's nowhere close to opening, but
stay tuned.
it's going to be at followyourgut.com. But the concept is I'm going to try to highlight other companies that are making real food. Because I do believe it's something that if the consumer wants to have, it is going to go away if we don't fight for it. Because it's just become too easy to to compromise quality out there. So I believe there's a consumer out there that demands this, and so the companies have to fight for it. And I just want to make sure we're like aligned and, you know, kind of talking to each other and making sure we're having these conversations together, even if they're completely separate industries. You know, and then also it might help a consumer when they're at, you know, Whole Foods or wherever they shop and they see 5 different types of
XYZ. How do I
whatever.
make a choice?
How do you make a choice?
Yep.
Like, you already know, okay, I'm only going to pick organic, fine. But then which brand is the one that's doing it the way I imagine in my head they are?
Exactly. So very similar, I think, to our work here, kind of creating a platform to amplify voices and tell stories. That's awesome.
Well, thank you for recognizing that, you know, Health-Ade is that.
Daina, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's
you're
great
welcome.
to have you in the studio. I am excited. I'm still sitting in front of a flight of kombuchas that we'll be enjoying for the rest of the day. You guys can, of course, in 42 states in the U.S., find kombucha wherever fine beverages are sold. Try the Beet. That's one of my faves. Try the Power Greens if you want something a little different. And, drink up, right?
Drink up. That's what I say. Follow your gut.
Follow your gut. Thank you so much for listening. We are, of course, a member-supported nonprofit radio station. If you like what you hear, please consider visiting the website, www.heritageradionetwork.org. Not only will you find 32 amazing weekly shows covering the world of food, beverage, and agriculture, you'll see a big beating heart in that top right corner. Click it and make a donation today. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned in.
Thanks for listening to this program on heritageradionetwork.org. You can find all of our archived programs on our website or as podcasts in the iTunes Store by searching Heritage Radio Network. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at heritage_radio. You can email us questions at any time at info@heritageradionetwork.org. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization. To donate and become a member, visit our website today. Thanks for listening.
Hey listeners, we're nearing the end of our 15th anniversary fundraising campaign, and we need your help to meet our goal. This campaign offers you a chance to win a unique food and music experience in one of the most exciting cities in America. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and you'll be entered to win dinner for two and 2 tickets to a concert in one of 8 amazing cities: New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and Asheville. All donations support our work educating food system storytellers. And when you donate, you can choose one of those cities and you'll be entered to win dinner and 2 tickets to a show. So help us reach our goal and enter to win dinner and a show in the city of your choice. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.